Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Beatrice Hyppolite and this is your world.
Hello, this is your world. Today I have the privilege to be on the set as the one who's conducting the interview. That's a privilege because, as you know, the normal host for this show is Dr. Hyppolite, but the role is a bit switched today. I take her role and she will be taking the role of those she interviewed almost every day on this show. It's a privilege for me to have Dr. Hyppolite on this show. I'm going to interview Dr. Hyppolite. When she asked me to do that job, I was so nervous because Dr. Hyppolite does it every single day. Now I am the one to do it. Dr. Hyppolite, I'm so happy. Thank you for inviting me to do that job, and it's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you so much, Dr. Joseph, for accepting, the role of the journalist.
Which I am, of
by
course.
Profession, you are. By profession, you are a journalist and you have your own radio show called Podium des Jeunes.
Yes.
Every Sunday. That's every Sunday.
Exactly.
What's the time?
Every Sunday from 4 to 6 on Fierté Haïtienne FM, we present that show. It's live on Facebook. It's live on the social media as well. So, but you know what? It's not to talk about Podium des Jeunes today.
But I invite everybody to tune in every Sunday at 3 p.m., right?
4, actually.
At 4
At
p.m.
4 p.m. Podium des Jeunes page on Facebook, YouTube, all of those, you will find it there. Thank you very much for this I would say free ad you're giving me. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Look, let's get serious about this, Dr. Hyppolite. I was thinking about that interview since the day you asked me to do it. Because I know you for 20 years or more. You are a best friend, that's a disclaimer. A friend who's interviewing another friend. And as a friend,
the godmother of one of your children.
My children, right? My princess. And first of all, I know you, but a lot of people know you as well. But I still think there are a few who do not really know you. For those who don't know you, can you tell them who is Dr. Hyppolite?
Oh, wow. I never really get in this situation like that to really say, who am I? You said it, I was born as Beatrice Hyppolite, though the full name is supposed to be Marie Beatrice Hyppolite. But I normally go by Beatrice Hyppolite.
They say every Haitian woman has married their names.
It's apparently, it seemed there was a time in the country where it was a requirement for people to have a first name and a middle name or two names, and for those who were privileged for their parents to pick their two names, they were just lucky. But for those whom parents didn't know how to pick the two names, when they go to do the birth certificate, they'll just, if it is a female, they just put Marie. If it is a male, they just put Jean. That's why you have a lot of Asian male, Jean. With Jean, and the female, it's Marie. Yeah. So unfortunately, and I've noticed the pattern, it's most likely for those whom parents were illiterate. So they ended up, with Marie. But those whom parents used to know how to read and write, they have a different name. Like you may see Pierre Richard, you may see Anne Robert, but not Marie. But you know what? Unfortunately, my mother didn't know how to read and write. But my given name, the name that my mother really gave me, was Beatrice. And I was blessed and privileged to carry her last name as well.
Hyppolite.
A last name that I cherish, to heart.
That is important. You said it. We will be talking about that later on, but it's a very good thing. Let me say that you were born in Haiti. You migrated to United States about 20-something years ago. and you get all the way up to the ladder, to the last rung of the ladder with a doctorate in public health, literally.
No, most
Right?
likely it's health science. So
Health science,
I
okay.
do hold a doctorate degree in health science with the focus on global health.
Okay.
And I also have a master's degree in social work. I've been in the field of the social work, of social services for over 14 years.
Interesting.
And during this time, I served or worked with different population, elderly, foster care, and domestic violence individual, people with disability, as well as criminal justice involved. So I've been around, and it's been the greatest privilege of my life to work with different population, be there for people, meet them where they at, and be able to give the best of me.
That is
You
so
know, as a
interesting.
person, as a healthcare provider, and as a social worker.
Yeah, yes. Look, for many people I met as Haitian myself, I'm Haitian, and I migrated to this country about almost at the same age that you, same time you migrated here. I decided to go to the field that I chose, and you decided to go to the field that you chose. What are the triggers to that academic path that you chose, health science?
You know, I was looking for how am I gonna call this session, this episode. You just gave me some hint. You know, so I think I'm gonna call it motivation.
That's what motivates you to
Because
that path.
we have to have things that really motivate us. I was born and raised in Haiti. I came to this country when I was, 30, and I was gonna be 31 the same year. So don't try to do the math, people.
Yeah, they don't
so
know how old you are now.
I'll tell you later on how old I am, but now just bear with me. And I was 30 years old. But growing up in Haiti, so you live with family, parents. They didn't have much. And I remember, one thing that Asian parents always used to say, stay in school. That's the only thing that I can offer you. I don't have lands, I don't have properties, I don't have assets, there is no wealth to leave you. But if you stay in school, you educate yourself, later on you can become somebody and you will be able to provide for yourself. They encourage us to gamble on education because that was the only game that you will never lose. That's what I know best. And when I came to this country at the age of 30, I kept the same mentality. I knew that, I came to this country, I didn't have anybody at all. But I knew it was a country of opportunity. I knew if I use my good senses and take the most advantage of it, I can make of myself something. And that's what I did.
Indeed, you did. But what I just want to get from you, Dr. Hyppolite, a lot of people, young ladies who came to this country from Haiti, you see a lot of nurses, a lot of medical doctors. They are in the healthcare field, but you take the mental, illness field. Well, as you said, you dealt with people from different horizons. But health science, why that, but not nursing, not going to medical school? What triggers that? Is it because you wanted to or your life, the way you were raised, seeing your mother, seeing your parents, you think there were some issues that you need to understand better, so that's why you go to that field? Or you need, because there is somebody you couldn't take care of, or someone you have taken care of, so you just go to that field?
I think, so for social work, I had the motivation for social work, or what got me in the field of social work is different than what got me in the field of health science. I always wanted to complete a doctorate degree, but I didn't know exactly. I was not focused on what it was gonna be. So the focus was more on public health because I like to get involved into people's life. I like to get involved into helping provide a way better quality of life for people. So that's what got me into health science. But what got me into social work is the experience that I had with my mother, the way I lost my mother through life, and the injustice that I've lived in Haiti. That's what got me into the field of social work, because I wanted to be able to be a change agent. I wanted to be able to, hey, be the voice for those who have, who have no voice. Be there to empower those who seem to be weak or helpless.
Interesting. That is so interesting. I'm glad I get this, and I think the viewers, those who are watching, they understand much better. When I say Dr. Hyppolite in health science field, they understand why you get into that. Let me say that. To me, of course, you are a successful woman. You have a very good academic background. You got a doctorate in health science, as we just spoke about it. You are working in your field of expertise. You have your own business. If they go online, they would see it. Now you have your own podcast show. Let me ask this. That I was puzzled by this. Why a podcast? Why do you have a podcast?
Why a podcast? It's very interesting, and I thank you for the question. Radio and television is not something new to me.
I know. Back from Haiti, right?
Back from Haiti, I used to be a radio host. Mm-hmm. The show was kind of different. I had two different set of shows. A religious show that called Bonjour Grand-Mère, Good Morning God. I had also an educative show. I really enjoy what I used to do back home. And when I came to this country, it was a different ball game. So you don't get into television or radio just like that. So, and I've noticed it's everything. Over here, what you know, it's something, but who you know, it seems to be the most important thing. So it's you may have that higher degree, but if you don't know somebody, or you may work in this job for 10 years, 8 years, just because you're not connected to the right people or don't cater to their ego, you may not amount to the highest level, because I experience it, so
right.
There are jobs that I work for. People that I've trained become supervisors.
And you still have your same jobs
but
at the same level.
And what never bothered me when I see it happening, it's because I said, upon taking that job, I was not seeking for, professional growth in a way. I was looking to make a difference into those clients, into the population that I'm serving. Right? So when I have a client, or see a client of mine outside and come and greet me and say, Miss Hyppolite, I'm doing this today, I'm doing that today because I followed your advice. That's my reward. That's why, not being able to get promoted in any job never really fazed me or put me in a situation where I feel less than I'm supposed to be, because I know the reason why I took that job, was to make a difference. Even if it is in one person's life, I achieve my goal.
So it's not the promotion itself, it's the service you're providing.
That's the way I move.
That is so interesting. That's well said, and that's great.
I remember, allow me to call you Flo.
It's
because
fine. that's how we call each other.
That's how we call each other. So people bear with us. So today I'm not Dr. Hyppolite, he's not Dr. Joseph. So I'm Bibi to him and he's Flo to me. I remember Flo, when we first met. We met at the church in my choir.
Yeah.
So right. You came to be a member of that choir.
Yeah.
I was already a member of that choir. I joined the choir probably 6 or 7 months
before.
Prior you
right.
came to the choir. And I remember when we first spoke, and the first thing we mentioned was about school.
Indeed.
And I said, when you said I just came, and I said, yeah, I recently came too. Do you have any plan to go to college? what college you wanna go to? And you
I
asked me
remember
the same question. And at that time, I remember when we were to take the TOEFL, we took the TOEFL the same day together.
Yeah, together.
So one thing that I always admire from you had a background, you completed a college degree back home the same way I did, but you didn't come with any chicks on your shoulder.
Indeed.
So whatever that you accomplished back home, you left it behind. You understood that coming to a brand new country, you will have to kind of recalibrate. And you did. You took the most creepy job, and you never had any shame of doing it. And today, look where you at.
Right. That is so interesting that you just saying that Dr. Hyppolite, Bea, I can call as I usually call you. No, it's so interesting that you're saying that. You say in that job, I wouldn't even call it creepy. That to me, it was the greatest job I could have had, because that's the first place that hired me when I first came here in this country, and that's how it allowed me to go to school to have the degree that I wanted to have, get my master's before I can work for the institution where I get my master's from, and get my doctorate. All of those things, that's very important. And talking about this, that will push me to ask you this. We have a lot of young people who come to this country, very young people, probably younger than us when we came to this country. And they may be so desperate either to go to school or either to work. If you were to give them an advice, what would that advice be? Go to school while you're working, or don't go to school, just work, or just go to school without working?
It depends what your resources are. So if you come to this country, and it depends how old are you too. If you are a young child, 16, 14, or 17, and you live with your parents or family members who can support you, while you have to finish high school and start college, by all means, so it's gonna depend. But if you come, like to this country and you are in your 20s, late 20s or early 30s, it's a must that you do both.
Yeah, I agree.
Because
the same thing we did actually.
You're no longer a child. So when I came to this country, like I just told everyone, I was already 30 years old. I walked back home with the city about 8 to 9 years. So I knew what working,
meant at the time.
So because I used to work back home, I was able to save a little bit of money to come to this country. When I came to this country, the first job I took, the first month I came to this country in the month of January. So it was freezing. Bear in mind, Haiti is a tropical country. So
you were not used to that winter
I'm not
season.
used season and wearing coat, boots, hats, and everything, scarves. So here I am, walking all the way down Flatbush, entering all the dollar stores, asking for jobs. And you know what? Within 2 days, I was hired. The first job I got, my first salary was $3.75
an hour.
$45 per day, 12 hours a day. But I took that job with a great pleasure. I was proud of myself. Not only nobody took me or looked around with me, with the little broken English that I had, I was able to walk all the way down Flatbush and look for a job. And I found a job within 2 days. Of course, the amount of money was not too much, but with that money, I was able to pay a room from somebody for $300. When I left my country, I was independent. And when I came here, being independent was important for me. I didn't see myself, to rely on somebody else. So later on, I stayed in that job for 7 months. And later on, so it's like I constantly changing job. Because bear in mind, when I came to this country, I was undocumented. I came with a visa, which I overstayed along the way. So it was not easy for me to go and apply for job because I didn't have no proper document to go and seek for a job.
You see what you're saying there? If you were on Podium des Jeunes, I have a question I would have asked you, but because I'm on your show, I'm on your podcast, and your podcast is not a political show, so I'm not going to talk politics because I hear a lot of that. As you said,
but
when you came here,
let me grant you permission to ask the question, because like people normally say, life is all about politics.
Right. On my podium, on my show, I would have asked you, because I heard a lot of talks like immigrants, about immigrants, specifically in the cycle. Like this, we are almost at the end of that political campaign, and I heard people from different sides who are talking about immigrants like they are ashamed of being an immigrant, specifically if you're coming from the island, from Haiti or so. You should feel ashamed. And if I hear what you're saying, undocumented, when we come to this country, we had no documents, we overstayed our visa. So, but we still follow the proper path. Until now, I think you had the privilege to vote for the next president of the United States.
Yes.
And it's a privilege, right?
It's a privilege.
You came without documents, and today you can vote.
Yeah.
And not only you can vote.
Not I can vote, I voted.
You voted. You voted. And not only you voted, you have the highest degree. You have a doctorate as an immigrant without documentations. So that makes me think what they are talking about immigrants, it's either they don't understand the role of an immigrant in any country.
You know, it is unfortunate. Oftentimes, I don't have the tolerance or the passion to waste time on nonsense or ignorance, because that will not take me anywhere. And I wish that many people who may say things, I wish that they knew history. Because if they have non-history,
there are things they wouldn't say.
There are things that will never came out of their mouth. But unfortunately, because they don't have any knowledge about history, so they feel comfortable to just talk. But to me, when they talk, so it's just like, noise. So I don't really pay them attention. I understand somehow I should have, because what they're saying, so while I choose not to pay attention to it, but the people who are listening to it,
they will take it as
it as a whole truth and come and address you in a very inappropriate manners. So it's like that's where the most dangerous come. But even those people who are talking about immigrant, it's either the immigrant themselves or the parents or immigrants, or they may marry with immigrant people. How could you be that hypocrite?
America is a country that's built under the immigrants' back.
So it's like, so the immigrant is the backbone of the country.
Yeah.
So I may be an immigrant into the U.S., in this country, a country that I love and appreciate and cherish. Because, the country, kind of like, shelter me, offer me with the greatest opportunities that I could ever had. I pray every day, for this country, the same way I pray every day that God, someday my country will change and become the pearl deserte that Haiti used to be. It's the same way I pray for that country to every day bless the United States of America, because it's my country. I live in this country. If I were to fight to protect this country, I'll fight to protect this country. So you see what I mean? It doesn't matter, if this crazy person said something that was inappropriate. I cannot, kind of like put the country into few words of crazy people. So as an immigrant, I came to this country. I brave so many storms to be in the position that I am today. I pay taxes. I probably pay more taxes than the people who kind of like talk nonsense or try to talk about me as an immigrant down, And I'm like, when I look at myself, being able to work as a mental health provider, being able to work with people who suffer with mental health problem, both hospital setting and jail
Jails.
setting. So it's like, I'm proud of myself. I'm proud of the work that I do. I'm proud of the difference that I make. And I'm proud of being an immigrant.
In this book, you talk about a lot of personal matters, very personal issues. The question I want to ask, at what stage of your life have you decided to share your personal matters with the whole world through this book? At what stage?
I have to be honest. I think there was never a stage that I really thought about. I think if I were to come out with a book, my first book will have been on mental health.
Yeah, but what makes you...
Not a memoir. But my childhood friend, was André Mortal, Francois. One day called me and said that she dreamt about her and I, working on a book. But I think, so she basically wanted to kind of like put me on the path of thinking about writing a memoir. And so we joke about it, we laugh, and that I never really take.
So I can say that was the trigger. When that dream.
That was the trigger. And before she hung up the phone, she's like, B, I'm serious. Go and start working on that. And I'm like, please, you give me a break. And 2 days later, the girl had the nerve to send me 30 subtitles. Because she knows my story. She knows my life. We were friends since we were 12 years old. We are the same age. And she's like, you have the subtitle now, just plug the information in. So, and
this is a friend, of course, you talk about in the book.
Yeah, so she has
friend.
a whole chapter on that book. And I laugh about it. So it's like, and I'm like, you know what? That's very interesting. I know God blessed me in so many ways. I know that I've accomplished a lot. But I know at the same token, many people have seen in me a source of inspiration. And I'm like, let me not keep it private. Let me be a source of inspiration to many. I don't know how many that I will be able to touch. But I know if I put those words out there in the form of a book, then I'll be able to touch many lives. I was so happy when a friend of my friend who happened to have a 12 years old son wrote a whole paragraph about the take out, he got from the book and wrote his mother a letter. And the father shared that letter with me.
That's
and
great.
He said, now I choose to be a better child because I only can imagine if I were her age at that time and not having my mother, what life would have been for me. And that's the whole purpose. This book is just to empower and encourage people not to get comfortable with where they are, or not to blame life on everybody else, not to do the right thing. Because in general, life will always be not fair. Life will always be hard. Life will always be harsh. People will always be evil. But at the end of the day, the choice you make is yours.
That is so interesting. In chapter 2, I'm going to merge 2 chapters in the book. I'm not going to talk about the whole book because I'm really advising all the viewers to go on Amazon, go everywhere you can get the book. Barnes and Nobles, just go there and get a copy of this book. That's exactly what I'm advising you to do. But I just want to ask you a few questions within books. As I said, chapter 2 and 3, you talk about the expression of obvious pain and also childhood loss in adult adventures. How would you explain the dilemma of pain, loss of childhood, and your adult adventures? How would you explain that?
You kind of like tackle the hardest chapters in the book. And those chapters were not easy to really put down. I shared a lot of tears. For many of you probably don't know or have heard about the time of Duvalier in the country, in Haiti, like I mentioned earlier. So I was born and raised in Haiti. There was a time the country had faced a serious time where the country had lived under the dictatorship of both the father and son, Duvalier, and I think both of them stayed onto power for nearly 30 years.
Yeah, about 29 years.
At that time, the citizens of the country really kind of like faced a really hard time. And you have the so-called Tonton Macode, which to me was a form of gang, but a more organized gang that Duvalier had put together. They were like Duvalier eyes. There was a lot of terror that people had to deal with. And the worst part, let's say, for example, if you and your beautiful wife, Lindy, went to a party and you see a guy who happened to be a Tonton Macode, if that guy, want to spend the night with your wife at that moment, your wife that you took to a special event, if that Tonton Macode want to spend the night with her, you will have no say. You had to surrender. And if you don't, you will be dead. And he will take your wife. So there are people who even have experience, upon leaving the church, a Tonton Macode will see the beautiful wife coming out and just get the wife and leave you at the church door. So that's a life, that's the reality that people have lived, in the country during the Duvalier time. You have people, if you have a house, if you have any property or what have you, if one Tonton Macode want to have it, and you tend to resist, something, you will be put in jail forever or you will be killed. And unfortunately, my mother was a casualty to that, regime, and
How did that happen? How did your mother was a casualty?
So apparently it was later on I found out that her place belonged to her. And there was a Tonton Macode who used to live near and wanted to have that place, and she didn't want to give it up.
And that's how
And as a result of that, she was put in jail. And I remember that night vividly. I was not even 8 years old. I probably was gonna be 8 years that same year. So the incident basically happened in the month of January, something like that. I remember the night that they came and took her. But I know it was night because the lights were on. Because I always remember that the lights were on and my mother had just given me a shower and put my beautiful yellow nightgown on me, to go to bed. And when they knocked at the door and she inquired who was there. So, and the answer was like, open the door before we blow your mind. I don't want to spoil the story.
Yeah, definitely. But still, you didn't stay on that. Because what is interesting in the book, although those chapters, I'm sorry, they are tough, as you said, to write. Those 2 chapters, as you said, you shed a lot of tears, but you didn't stay there. Because one of the former American President, Barack Obama, he writes about the audacity of hope. Actually, in this book, you show that hope, right? Because in the sense that you talk about the power of prayer. You also show how good decisions can come out of broken heart, and also disappointment can become synonym of blessings. So you didn't stay in this nightmare.
Oh, yes, I did not. Because bear in mind, at that time, I didn't know I had a father. I didn't know who my father was. My mother was my everything. My mother was my mother, my father, my everything, like I said. So the word father that was not something that was never mentioned in my household. So, and back then in Haiti, so, kids, we don't ask questions. Whatever that you don't see, you don't ask about it. Whatever that you so you don't ask questions. So you ask questions, you get beaten just for asking questions. I never really asked questions. I think that never really crossed my attention. I didn't understand the need of a father, or if a father was supposed to be around. So that was never an issue for me. And for at that moment, so it was like a neighbor who happened, to have conversation about my mother, and she knew where my father was. And that was that neighbor who took me to my father. But unfortunately, my father could not accept me. My father never accepted me to begin with. So since the day I was born, my father never wanted to be part of my life. And so when the situation occurred, so my father, when I was brought to his location where he had his business, it was a serious dilemma for him. He was already married at the time, but never told his wife. His wife never knew
that he had
about
a child.
me. Now you're gonna bring a child that you never spoke about to your wife. But eventually, so his wife, it was the wife who ended up coming for me. I don't want to spoil the story. People have to read it. But it's like,
Wow.
through that experience, so it's like now here I am in my father's household, with siblings that I never knew before, siblings that I never met before, siblings that I'm gonna experience to live with for the first time under the roof with a father who never loved you back then and sin will never love you even the day after. So I was like, how am I gonna deal with that? A father who will compare two siblings, saying that, I don't want you to play with this one because I don't want her to instill in you bad manners. That other one is older than me. So it was a whole struggle. And when I realized I probably was 10 or less than 12 years old, but most likely when the news of the passing of my mother came into the house, that's when I knew I needed to grow, because I've realized that I needed to be an adult.
I see. At a very young age.
At a very early age, to kind of like mingle or move around that world, because I realized that if I don't become an adult very quick, it will be hard for me to survive.
But let me interrupt you there. But while you're surviving, there are some values, I would say moral values, that guided your path throughout your growth. And you spoke about them in your book, like honesty, dignity, morality.
Let
you
myself guided
those
by, to be the Beatrice that I am today.
Be brave.
Be brave.
Be you.
Be bold.
Be bold. Be you and Beatrice. I think I'm gonna stop here. I cannot speak more about the book because it's right there, and I'm encouraging everybody who's watching the show right now to get a copy of this book. Barnes and Nobles, Amazon, everywhere you can get a copy. You will not regret it. It's a very well put book.
But one thing that I want to say to everybody who's listening or watching, I know life is not easy. Just the fact that it was hard for many, it doesn't have to be the same for everybody. But at the same token, don't sit at one place. Don't say, I'm not gonna push my life or myself because my mother was supposed to be there for me was not there for me when I needed her. Or my father who was not there for me, the time that I needed him. So it's like, as a result of that, if I end up not to be anybody in life, it's because my mother was not there for me or my father was not there for me. I understand that can be a very huge impact on your life. But at the end of the day, you have to learn how to live beyond this to move on. Because whatever that your mother, your father was supposed to do for you, and for whatever reason they were not there for you, but you cannot let their behavior dictate the future of your life. Your life is your life. You have to take responsibility of your life. You have to know what you want to become. Where do I want to go in life? Where do I want to reach in life? Because if I sit here and keep on putting blame on you and don't do whatever that I have to do for myself, it's going to be for my own loss.
You see what you're saying? That's exactly, I let this what you just said, I live by it every single day. I can share my success with everybody else, but my failure is only my own.
Yes.
If I fail, it's because I want to be
Yeah,
I want to fail.
Yeah.
If I succeed, somebody probably has helped me to succeed
Yeah.
in life.
I always tell people, so you can blame as much as you want, but at the end of the day, the choice you make is yours.
So we have this kind of broken family, children who are being raised without a father, or even children who are being raised without the mother as well. For those kind of children out there, what's the message for them?
Life is hard. It was hard yesterday. It's hard today. It may
will
be
be
harder tomorrow. Yesterday, we dealt with an evil world. Today, the world seems to be very evil than it was yesterday. And tomorrow, it can be worse. But at the end of the day, we need to take actions. Our actions matters. The way we move, the choices that we make in life, they matter. So it's like, don't stay at one place and say, you know what, so that's my reality. Somebody was supposed to be there for me, was not there for me. As a result of that, I'm not gonna do anything with my life. I'm not gonna move forward. I'm not gonna try to expand or accomplish something good for my life, because it's gonna be for your own loss. If you got to a point where you feel that you may need professional assistance, you may need therapy in order to move, because there are people who can stuck at one place, then seek for therapy, because stay at one place is not gonna do you any favor. Because at the end of the day, the person was supposed to do whatever that she or he was supposed to do for you and never done it, probably will never care. But while you choose not to care about me, I cannot allow myself not to care about Beatrice.
Dr. Hyppolite, thank you for sharing your story with us today.
Thank you. Thank you so much, for doing this. It was a pleasure. I'll see you next time.
My dear friends, definitely you will find something to get from that interview. Today it was your world, and tomorrow it will still be your world. Ciao. See you next time.